So we are back, and this is Nick. I'm the background here is the Warsaw Uprising Monument, and over my shoulder is President Trump. So this is a picture from July 6th, 2017, when President Trump gave a very inspiring and I think one of the best of his presidency speeches in Warsaw. And let me try to get this out of the frame. And what I'm going to do today is tell you why President Trump's victory will be good for Poland. And why don't we go? Why don't I open the window and then to where it needs to be, not to my email inbox? All right. Do. So this is what it's like when you're doing something. All right. For the not first time, but second or third time that I'm using this. So this is a tweet that I posted, or I guess you call it a post now that it's X because it's not Twitter anymore. But what we have here are 7 reasons President Trump's second term will be good for Poland. And note that this is from, when was this? July 14th of this year, so well before the election. And I had a strong belief that President Trump would win, and he did win. And one thing to note about President Trump, President-elect Trump now, but President Trump, is that he has a track record. He has 4 years as a president that you can look back on. And but here we're going to focus on international relations, specifically with Poland, and why I think he is going to be good for Poland. I can't guarantee it, but based on what I've seen so far, this is what I think we could see and are likely to see in the broad strokes at least. So number one, President Trump gave the best speech in history about Poland by an American politician during his 2017 visit at the Warsaw Uprising Monument. The location itself was very significant. He understands and appreciates the historic challenges Poland faces and America's role in them, and he respects the Polish people. So just to give you a little background here, and I've done other posts that you're welcome to look at and a few videos too on the Warsaw Uprising. And this is the Warsaw Uprising Monument. So the Warsaw Uprising took place in August and September 1944. It broke out. The anniversary of the uprising is every August 1st. We recently marked the 80th anniversary of the Warsaw Uprising. I was there in Warsaw in August. I don't think I put that video up yet, but I will soon. And it holds special significance for Poles. It was their attempt to liberate themselves of the German occupiers prior to the arrival of the Soviet Red Army. The uprising was ultimately unsuccessful. It cost the lives of several 100,000 Poles, at least 40 or 50,000 of them brutally murdered in the first few days of the uprising in the Wola district, brutally, bestially murdered by Germans and their accomplices from various nations. That's a subject for another video. The uprising was not allowed to be commemorated for 50 years after it happened, for nearly 50 years, because Poland was under Soviet Russian occupation, and the communist authorities would not allow for that information to go out because it ran counter to the Soviet narratives. The Soviets, the Red Army, waited passively on the eastern bank of the Vistula River while the uprising played out and these horrible massacres occurred. And ultimately, after 2 months, the uprising was defeated, and the Poles in their ruined capital had to give up their arms. And then afterwards, the Germans systematically razed the city to the ground. It was the most destroyed major city in World War II, more so than Stalingrad and other places, because no other city was this systematically destroyed. Trump's choosing of the location for this speech was significant because it acknowledged that this was a pivotal event to the polls. Many U.S. politicians and his daughter, Ivanka Trump, and her husband Jared Kushner went to the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising Monument and laid flowers. But that is the place where many U.S. presidents and politicians have gone, of course, because there's a large Jewish population in the United States, and they want their votes. It's an influential minority group, but it's not the epicenter of Polish recent history. This is also a discussion for another video, and I don't want to draw things too far out on each of these points. I just want to give a quick summary, but the Holocaust is not the most significant event in Polish history. It is for the Jewish people. It is a very significant event in world history, but it's not the touchstone for Polish history. The Jews were, of course, a large minority group in the Polish Second Republic. They were citizens of Poland who were murdered by the Germans and their accomplices. And but it's the Polish experience is broader than the Holocaust, and a lot of the strife about between Poles and Jews is that the Poles feel that, rightfully so, that their suffering is minimized and grotesquely minimized by suggesting things. For example, a prominent one historian in particular that comes to mind said this, that you have to remember that the Poles were both victims and perpetrators, very false equivalents. Of course, there were people who sold out the Jews to the Germans. This was a small minority of the Polish population. There were Jews who sold out other Jews to the Germans. But it's a complex story that cannot be definitely simplified into suggesting that half of the Poles were bad and half were good, or some weird thing like that, which has been done in other cases too, with the Jedwabne massacre, for example. But in any case, significant location, very big of President Trump to choose this location, and I think very acute politically to do it. This location went over very well. And the monument here shows the soldiers of the uprising. Nearby, there's also a complimentary piece to the monument that shows people going down into a sewer drain, which is what they had to do to escape the old town, which is right adjacent to the old town is where this is. This is the Polish Supreme Court there. And so that kind of shows the part of the experience of the uprising. Number two, Poland's President Andrzej Duda is friendly with Trump. Thanks in part to his intervention, Trump publicly supported the congressional funding bill for Ukraine, which passed a few days afterwards in late April this year. International relations often hinge on personal relationships. Although Duda's second term ends in less than 1 year, actually now in 6 months or less, that when the Polish presidential election occurs next year, this friendship could add gravitas to the Law and Justice Party's presidential candidate, who we now know is Karol Nawrocki, who is the head of the Institute of National Remembrance, the main historical organization in Poland having to do with the crimes perpetrated by both the Germans and the communists in Poland. And so this is kind of, we'll see what happens, but Duda has already met several times with Trump, and he has a good relationship with him. I don't know how much it will help, but it's definitely a benefit, especially since the Polish parliament is controlled by the what was the opposition party, the Civic Platform, and their affiliates, against the ousted Law and Justice Party, which lost the elections over a year ago in Poland. So it's important for the Law and Justice candidate to take whatever support he can from Duda. I'm not sure how willing he will be to share the connection, but it would definitely be helpful. And since President Duda is a member of the Law and Justice Party, I think he will do as much as he's able to help that candidate. And this helps Poland too, because this is a whole nother video too, is Poland's in a tough situation now with a lot of very devious things being done by the current government, undemocratic things, persecution of political opponents, etc. So there needs to be some balance, and hopefully that comes in the form of a Law and Justice presidential candidate. The presidency in Poland is not as strong as in the U.S., so it's much more symbolic, but there are some important things they can do, like veto legislation and some other things. And symbolically, as a representative of the country, they are basically the number one person. Within Europe, you could say maybe it's more so the prime minister, but on the global stage, it's definitely the president. Number three, and this is an important one, Vladimir Putin respects Donald Trump. For the only time in his 25-year reign, Putin invaded no new territory during the Trump administration. He was wary of Trump's response and waited until Biden was in charge to invade Ukraine, particularly after the disastrous Afghanistan pullout. Trump understands the need to negotiate from a position of strength. An eventual ceasefire and negotiations to end the conflict will be geared towards strengthening NATO's resilience and reducing dependence on the United States. Ukraine's recovery of its lost territories is not a critical factor for Poland's national defense. And despite the mass of lies and propaganda to the contrary, Trump is not a Russian agent or Putin's puppet. Putin is wary of him. He is not sure what he will do. He misjudged Biden and the response of the U.S., but after what happened in Afghanistan, he made the calculation that the U.S. response would be weak. If he had Trump on his wrapped around his finger, then he would have attacked Ukraine when Trump was president, but he did not do that. So I think Trump is in a stronger position. He's a better negotiator. Biden's not a negotiator. He leaves everything to his lieutenants. All right, number four. Poland has thwarted thousands of attempted illegal crossings of its border with Belarus in the past several years. In the same period, millions of illegal aliens have flooded into the United States on top of at least 20 million, exclamation point, illegals currently in the country. As the German-controlled EU prepares to relocate quote-unquote illegal aliens into Poland, an ally in the White House who is skeptical of Germany and a fierce defender of national borders and identity will be the most important friend that Poland's unrepresented conservatives have. So this is another example of how having a friend in the White House that's on the same page as not just the opposition party, the Law and Justice Party in Poland, but most Poles. They don't want relocated migrants. Of course, they don't want illegal invaders breaking through their borders, as has been happening for several years through the Belarus border with Poland, facilitated by Russia as a form of hybrid warfare. So again, Trump serves as a inspirational figure for the Polish conservatives, and as someone who's just going to say no, I mean, how much they can enforce it, that's another question, but someone who's just not going to go along with what Germany wants, because when we talk about the EU, we're talking about the German-dominated EU, and so Trump serves as a balance against Germany in European issues. Number five, and here you have the former prime minister and current prime minister of Poland, Donald Tusk, who's a very controversial figure in Polish history. Here you have Angela Merkel, who is like his mentor, political mentor. Poland's current government, led again by Prime Minister Donald Tusk, acts like a subcontractor for Berlin's interests. The ongoing weakness of the ousted Law and Justice Party, now in opposition, is creating an increasingly jarring leadership vacuum as Poland faces ever greater domestic and international threats. Absent any inspiring national leaders in Poland, a pro-Polish, patriotic American president will serve as priceless inspiration for a still maturing generation of young Polish politicians and an example of the type of muscular and vigorous leadership Poland needs. And so this covers things that I was just saying. And here you had Tusk, the, idiot, making this symbol here, which even if it was not meant to be a gun symbol, is bad optics. I don't know what he was trying to show, or trying to be funny, or trying to show that he's directing Trump or whatever. But it looks terrible, and he's not someone. He is someone who would do this into someone's back, not to their face. That's the kind of guy he is, unfortunately. So again, um, Trump is a world class balance to this, to some extent at least. Of course, he's not going to influence Polish domestic politics, but he can serve as a counterpoint to what is there now. Number 6, the greatest danger faced by Europe in the past, present, and future is German-Russian cooperation. Shocking, but it's like people act like this hasn't happened in the past before and hasn't led to disastrous, tragic consequences. The um, Second World War being the prime example of that, and the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact that led to it, the Hitler-Stalin Pact, the Germany-Soviet-Russia Pact. From Lenin's German-sponsored train ride to initiate the Bolshevik coup in Russia, to the Hitler-Stalin Pact that destroyed Europe and led to Poland's enslavement for 50 years, to the more recent Ukraine invasion, funded by Berlin's hundreds of billions of euros in energy purchases from Moscow, the danger is ever present. Trump is the only national leader that can block the resurgence of this unholy alliance. He understands the anti-American hostility of both Germany and Russia. His leverage includes America's historical and continuing role as Europe's defender, and the economic pressure it can exert. And here pictured you have former Chancellor of Germany Gerhard Schroeder warmly embracing Vladimir Putin. Schroeder earned a lot of money on the board of Gazprom, the main Russian energy supplier to Europe. Nord Stream were, and let me read it here instead of improvising. After leaving public office, Schroeder worked for Russia's Gazprom, Rosneft, and Nord Stream, with the pipeline supplying energy into Europe, as Moscow's best lobbyist in Europe, deepening the continent's energy dependence on Russia. So the idea here is that, again, Trump can serve as a counterbalance, perhaps increasing U.S. energy deliveries to Europe to balance against Russia, because Germany very much so wants to get back in bed with Russia. That was the underpinning of their economy, was cheap Russian energy, and they did not care about the costs. Even at the beginning of the invasion of Ukraine this year, 2 years ago, they were very cautious about doing anything, hoping that Putin would quickly roll up Ukraine and they could get back to business and make some kind of a deal. And Trump was against that going back 6, 7, 8 years. And I think I actually even mentioned it here, so I'll just read it. Secretary General of NATO Jens Stoltenberg, now former, I believe it's Mark Rutte, the former Prime Minister of the Netherlands, who is now the NATO Secretary General, but for a long time it was Jens Stoltenberg. And more recently, Rose Gottmuller, Deputy Secretary General of NATO from October 2016 to October 2019. She gave a talk at the Channing House prior to me giving a talk there. So if you want to see that video where I summarize many of these Ukraine-related issues, this was from May of this year, then please take a look at that. They have lauded Trump for the pressure he put on NATO members, above all Germany, to increase defense spending. This far-sighted policy came years before Russia invaded Ukraine and better prepared the continent for the full-scale war that broke out in 2022. The ridiculous assertion that Trump could pull the U.S. out of NATO is peddled by people who don't understand high-level negotiations and influence. Trump was asking the question for years now, as I said, why is it that the U.S. is spending all of this money on NATO, whereas other countries who are obligated to spend at least 2% of their GDP aren't doing so? And the main offender in that category is Germany, the wealthiest country in Europe and the biggest slacker when it comes to defending Europe. Actually, they undermine European security through their focus on enriching themselves at the expense of others, basically unilaterally making deals with Russia for energy and whatnot, totally undermining the principles of collective negotiations of the EU, which they criticize other countries for, but they will do it at the highest level, at the most dangerous, in the most dangerous way. And here you have Stoltenberg and Trump. I believe this might have been at the summit where Tusk did that symbol at Trump's back. And the final reason, Trump can take an assassin's bullet and stand back up with vigor. He's weathered the slings and arrows of the most outrageous and sustained attempts at character assassination in American political history. And there we have a borrowing from a bit of Hamlet, the famous soliloquy about the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. And he appreciates the underdog as long as they're a fierce fighter and they never give up, like Poland. And this was posted, I think, just a few days after the attempted assassination against Trump, and when he really started gaining some momentum. And it turned out that that momentum was there all the time. It was another fake media narrative that Trump was fading and that Kamala was going to beat him, or was neck and neck. That was not the case. So there we have all these reasons. Tell me what you think. Am I on the right track? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I think these things still hold true. Of course, there are other variables at play that we can talk about, but this is basing a lot, or just about everything, off of what Trump has already done and said. So Trump is someone who wants a strong Europe, Eastern Europe especially, to be a strong buffer against Russia. He recognizes that Poland and other countries in the region rely on the United States for their defense. They're not going to turn to Germany or France to defend them in case of a conflict. It all comes down to the alliance with the United States through NATO. So that's where we are, and so I welcome you to leave a comment and to subscribe if you want some more content like this. I regret I did not go to the to Trump's speech. I could have gone. My family member was I don't want to block President Trump here. My family member worked in the government at that time, so she would have been able to get a ticket for me, and I would have been the only one there with a red "Make America Great Again" hat, because no one else had one yet then in the first half of 2017. But I didn't go. I ended up I was in California at the time. I had just come back from Poland, so I wasn't going to go right back to Poland for the speech. I think it was okay. I ended up seeing a friend, an old fraternity brother who passed away a few years after that, and I think that was the last time that I saw him, so that's okay. Maybe there'll be another opportunity to go to Poland and to see President Trump give another speech. So thank you again for watching, and this is Nick signing off from Silicon Valley, but with my heart ever in Poland and in Warsaw. Talk to you later. Bye.